You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo for another edition of this week's Long Island News, the news show that brings you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. Well, hello, John.
Hi there, Bill. Not bad. Kind of ready for a Labor Day weekend, I'm pretty sure. It's been a pretty long week for a lot of people, it seems like, here on Long Island, especially with this storm, which, flooded a lot of areas. So I'm doing okay. Not as bad as some, it looks like. So hope you've been well. How'd you guys fare?
Oh, well, hanging out, not too bad. I woke up pretty late at night to listen to the howling winds, and I was a little surprised. The weather people, they did tell us it was going to be something, but I guess I didn't listen that closely, figuring,
Yeah, that's what normally kind of happens for most. You figure, right, rain.
Yeah,
it's not the hurricane that it was, down in the south. So
yeah.
What could be the worst if that happens? And
but
then I started to get these text messages until 2 a.m. Because I'm still in the city right past the border.
Right.
And they were telling me, take higher ground. But then people were joking on social media that then there were tornado warnings that were coming out of Jersey and towards like the Bronx.
Yeah.
And they were saying, go to the basement.
Yeah, right.
So people were kind of in a weird place. I know there's stories about people from Long Island calling about city, family members that they couldn't get in contact with the NYPD. And it seemed like a really kind of, unique situation. And I know we'll talk with Alfonso Castillo a little while from Newsday about what has happened to the MTA and Long Island Railroad service since the storm, inundated a lot of their tracks and flooded a lot of tunnels and whatnot.
So
we'll go there in a little while. But
some of those videos on TV that they were showing with the water that came down the stairways was just incredible.
Waterfalls right here, the Great Neck, Port Washington line.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything that resembles that, where it looks like literally like a man-made waterfall.
Yeah.
Like it just coming down, and if you were underneath it, it would just probably sweep you right down the tracks.
Definitely.
It's not what you want, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
But so we'll get into the details of this main recap story from Newsday.
Yes, let's look at this.
Contributed by a number of members of staff for Newsday in terms of the reporters, including Alfonso.
Yep.
And like I said, I know we.
All right. So Long Island dries out from Ida's historic rainfall as Biden pledges aid for the hard-hit Northeast. So the region was recovering Thursday from a rainfall of historic proportions that swamped roadways, disrupted travel, and forced residents to abandon their vehicles and homes as floodwaters rose. Local officials acknowledged they were surprised by the ferocity of the remnants of Ida, which killed 13 people in New York City. The storm had weakened since cutting a swath through the southeast as a hurricane, but had enough punch to dump up to 9 inches of rain in some places on Long Island. The result was massive flooding on ground already saturated by 2 prior tropical storms in recent weeks. President Joe Biden pledged to help the recovery and spoke to Kathy Hochul and the governors of New Jersey and Pennsylvania on Thursday morning. I made clear to the governors that my team at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, is on the ground and ready to provide all the assistance that's needed, Biden said. Hochul called the storm and flash flooding unprecedented as she toured the damage at the Long Island Railroad's Great Neck station Thursday afternoon. She had declared a state of emergency for Long Island and New York City earlier. Well, the station Wednesday night was transformed into Niagara Falls as storm waters flowed onto the tracks below, she said. What we saw last night was nothing short of unprecedented, Hochul said. I can't imagine a community going through this before. We are told it's a 500-year event. That's the scale that we're talking about. Well, the new governor in her second week on the job promised to investigate whether there was enough warning about the storm's potential for damage. That's the scary thing. If we just had 2 storms in a row, and they were both bigger than normal, I'll say.
Yeah.
Whatever normal is. So that's it's a scary thought to think that this is the new normal.
No, certainly. That is a big discussion that's coming from this when you see what happens on the West Coast with wildfires, and you see, obviously, these increased kind of the saturation levels and the amount of energy that these systems are carrying, kind of out this way in the east that normally they hadn't. That's something that I know people are certainly referencing in terms of, are we seeing those early signs of climate change really taking hold? That's something that's certainly worth discussing. But to your point that you just raised, Bill, in terms of the level of saturation we already had, as my understanding was, I know specifically in the city that, we had gotten about 6 inches the week before, in a matter of a few hours, we had gotten this amount again. And basically the system was so overflowed that it never had the ability to regain capacity, that all the storm drains, catch basins, the soil itself, that would normally absorb that water, it just couldn't. It was that sponge that had nothing else to give, basically. And that's why when you have cities that are mostly concrete and the water is going to flow just downhill, as gravity tends to do,
got to go somewhere.
You get these crazy scenes like that waterfall, as the governor described over here, and tons of other things, like you said, that people have seen on social media.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that we see in our neighborhood is you do see people now that are concerned about the large trees that are near their houses. The worst thing in the world to happen is that the ground gets 100% saturated, and then here comes the wind. And that's just a recipe for disaster, And we've seen a few really big trees come down around the Massapequas that, it's just amazing. They rip up the sidewalk. They rip up the street. You don't realize just what kind of force a falling tree, and we all pray that it just doesn't hit the bedroom while we're sleeping,
Exactly. Like the homeowners that we're going to mention in a moment, I believe were part of this story, I believe over in Lloyd's Neck, where certainly check out those images, because it looks like something that, an artist would construct as, some kind of, surreal, like, bedroom scene. But no, it certainly, catches anyone's attention and, makes them really appreciate how strong nature is when, something like that, changes your day or hopefully not your life.
To continue on, she said she's wondering, the governor's wondering, was there a breakdown in communication with the weather systems? She's asking, were we prepared enough? I am going to intensely ask those questions, get the answers, and when I get them, share them with the public. Well, in New York City, of the 13 people who died from the storm, 11 were in Queens and 2 were in Brooklyn, according to the NYPD. Some 25 families had to be relocated, according to the NYPD. Families are in mourning right now, Mayor Bill de Blasio said. People are going through hell right now, and they need help. Well, Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone said this really was a devastating storm. In many ways, the people were not prepared for, did not expect. We're still assessing the property damage. Well, the amount of rainfall produced in the storm was a number that we have not seen before in the region, he said, outside the Huntington Fire Department, adding that it was urgent to make an investment in infrastructure to make communities more resilient to the effects of strong storms. The National Weather Service, which had warned about Ida for days, sent out multiple alerts overnight, warning of life-threatening flash flooding, severe thunderstorms, and even tornadoes. New York City issued its first flash flood emergency. Well, dozens upon dozens of people were rescued on Nassau County's North Shore, which saw historic flooding, said Michael Utaro, the county's chief fire marshal. There were rescues on the Northern State Parkway, Northern Boulevard, Lakeville Road, Community Drive, and throughout Port Washington, he said. Port Washington firefighters rescued the occupants of nearly half dozen vehicles on Shore Road and 3 families in Sands Point between 11:30 p.m. Wednesday and 12:30 a.m. Thursday, according to Department Chief Brian Watterson. A lot of basements were flooded, Watterson said. Streets were flooded, cars were trapped in water. Occupants had to be saved, and they were nervous, frantic, but they were not injured. So state police said from 6 p.m. Wednesday to 6 a.m. Thursday, they dealt with 13 disabled vehicles, 12 crashes, 2 trees down, and 3 areas of heavy flooding, leading to 3 full road closures on the Northern State Parkway. Bellone said Suffolk emergency crews also had to evacuate 12 residents from an apartment building, moving them to the Huntington Fire Station and later to a hotel. There were uprooted trees and flooded basements were being pumped out at several parks. Said George Gorman, the Long Island Regional Director for the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Quamsut State Historic Park Preserve in Lloyd Harbor appeared to be hit the hardest, with 2 trees toppled onto historic buildings. Long Island Railroad President Philip Eng said the agency, which shut down service at 12:30 a.m., was able to begin restoring service around 4 a.m. It's not a light decision to shut down service, but with visibility near zero and seeing the devastation that Ida was causing elsewhere, it was the right call, Eng said. So PSEG Long Island said in a statement Thursday morning that it had turned the lights back on for 24,000 of its 1.1 million customers. About 1,300 customers were without power Thursday at about 7 p.m. And Nassau County Executive Laura Curran said the North Shore saw a record 3 inches of rain in 1 hour Wednesday, even as she reassured residents the county would get back on its feet. Yes, we had flooding. Yes, we had abandoned cars. We had to rescue people from the sides of the road submerged in cars. And we are dealing with flooded basements and damage to property. But by and large, we're going to be fine, she said. Well, Hochul said the region is better prepared for coastal flooding, but local infrastructure needs significant improvements on the street level to address flash flooding, including better sewage and drainage. It's not waves of the ocean, Hochul said, of the effects of recent storms. It's flash floods. So the Weather Service reported that Glen Cove led the way in rainfall amounts with 9 inches. Oldfield received 7.2 inches, which was tops in Suffolk. The deluge really hit the North Shore, Curran said. The peninsula got walloped last night. Residents of the North Shore community of Lloyd Neck saw trees felled on top of homes and severe damage many speculated could only come from a tornado. What do you think of that, John?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard of a confirmed touchdown of a tornado in Long Island or Nassau, but I know in New Jersey you saw that it certainly happened, and up in the Bronx they were getting warnings throughout the night. And I don't know, man. That is certainly something, again, that we're, every once in a while you get a microburst or something that comes around, but that's not the new normal that I don't think any of us really are that interested in. I mean, continuing.
I've lived on Long Island quite a long time, and tornadoes was really never one of our worries. I don't know, maybe we were naive, but you didn't see it happen like that. We'd get winds, we'd get hurricane winds and that kind of thing. But I remember as kids, we used to go out in the hurricane. But with the ferocity, I mean, some of these now, when we were kids, it wasn't like the wind was blowing 140 miles an hour and we went out. No, it was usually in the eye of the storm, or, it wasn't. You just went out to look at the conditions.
Yeah, a low tropical storm.
Look around. But nowadays, I don't think I'd venture out after what I saw the other night. I mean, I looked out at about.
Obviously that, the authorities who are in charge of, rescuing people, the last thing they really need is more people who are sightseeing, potentially causing themselves danger or harm, or, needing to be rescued and divert resources. So obviously the standard line is to, stay home, and, when it's that bad, to just kind of hunker down and, do what you need to do, have your kind of disaster safety plan and everything, and, go bags or whatever, there.
I think the other thing that's which there are roads. I mean, they're talking about Northern Boulevard, the BQE. I mean, there were cars that had to be abandoned because now when you drive those places during the daytime, it's kind of hard to identify, where would that spot be that so much water could pile up that I could lose my car driving through it,
Oh, yeah. That's what was amazing. Yesterday I was working, I do mostly constituent services, but also, we were working in Queens, responding to a lot of these flood zones, and just driving around, in between those different stops. I've never seen so many cars just on the side of the road, just parked, and swept to the side, and just everywhere, just all over the LIE, the Van Wyck. The traffic was insane, even the local roads, because you couldn't get around things at points, and like I said, I've never seen something where that many cars were likely totaled, especially the people. What we saw a big problem with those declined basements, where the driveway is at a straight decline at a pretty high angle, and they floated. They just kind of fall over to the side, and everything in that garage is destroyed. The utility rooms, all that type of stuff. I heard pretty harrowing accounts.
Yeah.
To be honest, unfortunately, one of the first places we went to was where two people passed away and were killed from the storm. The water broke through the wall in their basement apartment and killed, unfortunately, a mother and a son. And, hearing the neighbors and hearing the father there cry, and just, kind of curse to the sky, like, it really is something that's so disturbing and kind of indescribable. Yeah. But at the same time, it makes you really understand why not just the climate change discussion, but of course the infrastructure discussion, which is, certainly a key topic when it comes to federal politics and, trying to get these types of upgrades for Long Island and the metro area. That, this is what we don't want to see happen. We don't want to see that change come after this. But certainly, it was certainly a strange, surreal day on my end.
Yeah, I think the other thing that someone mentioned that, you don't think about sometimes, in a snowstorm, you'll often see, cars left because people can't move. But when the snow melts, they can go back to their cars and start them up, and they usually do, and then they just drive away. Not so with this kind of thing.
This was different. Yeah, the batteries, I saw mostly people's batteries were fried. I saw people, just trying to bring fans and dry out their, engine bays and, checking did they get, water in the oil, of course, and all these other things that, lead to a complete total. And that's if your car wasn't fully submerged even, so.
Yeah, and especially with, the electronics that are involved in some of the new cars. I mean, everything is, all these little computers and.
Yep. Once it shorts out, then it's just a big brick,
Yeah, right. Oh,
so,
what a shame. What a shame.
Definitely saw lots of contractors, though, yesterday. They were certainly being kept busy. Folks going around. There's, like, garbage waste removal services. And, like I said, it was in certain areas. And the big thing, we talked to folks from Con Ed.
Right.
And, they were on scene. And, obviously they got residents coming up to them. There was a senior, he was probably around, north of 80. And so... And, he's just wondering, like, so what can I expect? And all they can do is literally toss their hands up and be like, we don't know. We can't turn your power on, even though you're not flooded. Yeah. Enough of your neighbors are flooded that if we turn the power on, they're all going to get electrocuted.
Yeah,
so until they can drain out these basements, there's nothing we can do. And the big thing that I took away was what he and one of his, colleagues were saying, that they've just never seen anything like this inland. Sandy was what it was, but that was mostly tidal surge. But these places, like you said, they're just random low-lying zones where the drainage was over capacity and the flooding, had nothing to stop it from building up. When you talk about, 9 inches in places, then
pretty wild.
That's a big deal,
Okay, and now we have with us from Newsday, Alfonso Castillo. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you? Good. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thanks for giving us some time. I know you're in the middle. You're waiting for a press conference, I guess you're going to go to, and we'll learn more about that later. But we actually we were talking about the Alfonso.
Remnants.
Just for the audience, you report on the MTA and transportation issues for Newsday. So we have a new MTA leader, I guess, temporary as it may be. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to see him in a few minutes. He's going to be at this press conference in Mineola. It's got to do with the reopening of the last of the eliminated grade crossings as part of the third track project. The new leader of the MTA is Jano Lieber, who's been with the MTA for some years. He was kind of their infrastructure guru, very intimately involved in these mega projects like third track. And I guess it's been about a month, 6 weeks since the former governor, Cuomo, installed him as the new acting chairman and CEO. Obviously, some of that was up in the air with Cuomo leaving office and being replaced by Kathy Hochul. Yesterday, they appeared together in Great Neck talking about the effects of the storm. Great Neck got it really bad. And it was, I think, the first major kind of vote of confidence that we saw the new governor give the acting chairman and CEO. So it sounded like it would bode well for him for sticking around for a while. Jano is very highly respected in the transportation community, gets a lot of the credit for streamlining a lot of these mega projects. Third track East Side Access, which was bogged down for years and years with delays and cost overruns. And when he joined the MTA a few years ago, really kind of overhauled the management of that project. And it has since then basically remained on budget and on time. And both Third Track and East Side Access are scheduled to be open late next year.
Yeah, well, that's
Okay,
big. If you're familiar with construction projects, there's a little thing called change orders, and once the deal
Right.
gets signed, then there's a room full of change orders, and all of a sudden there's another $1 billion on the project because somebody forgot the paper clips or they didn't get the the right truck, or it is incredible when you really get to see it. I'm familiar with the East Side Access project. I saw some of the plans when it was coming up, and. But do you think? I mean, how did he actually get into this position? Was it the MTA that, like?
That was the appointment by the governor, previous governor.
Oh, that's
correct?
okay. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but he had been kind of an increasingly a high-profile, public, influential figure at the MTA for the last couple of years, certainly in the last year or two. I mean, he really was the point man on a lot of these infrastructure projects. So not surprising that he would end up in this position. As far as his background, he's a New Yorker, grew up in Manhattan, lives in Brooklyn, has a history in building. He was very involved in the redevelopment of the World Trade Center after the attacks. That's really what he was doing before coming to the MTA, and really hit the ground running, when he came to the MTA. You mentioned change orders. That was a big target of his when he came over, especially as it relates to East Side Access. And he talked about the process of dealing with these change orders and how prolonged it was. And essentially, East Side Access was kind of the opposite of the way he likes to run things. So short of being able to kind of scrap the whole thing and start anew, he really sought to streamline the project. The big kind of trend in development in the state is what they call design build, where you hire essentially one firm to both design a project and build the project. And the idea is that it clears away a lot of kind of the bureaucracy and different firms stumbling over each other. Couldn't do that with East Side Access because it was already well underway, and there were dozens of contracts, I believe. But he did work to kind of incorporate some of kind of the spirit of design build with the East Side Access in streamlining a lot of it, kind of making more sense of the order of different projects. When he came over, he set the new deadline of the end of 2022, and they've stayed on pace.
That is certainly not a small feat.
No, that's
like you
pretty
said,
big.
knowing the context of everything prior. But to maybe the larger point of him taking over, as that acting board chair, and obviously there's discussion about them needing to be confirmed by the legislature, and the discussion of the splitting of the role between, I believe, himself and Sarah Feinberg, who was also with the MTA in a different role previously. But besides that, since he's been here, we said 6 weeks or so, I know it's been a very fluid situation. The governor who appointed him obviously is no longer the governor. In addition to that, I know he was kind of becoming more high profile after the incidents in Queens, where a Con Ed station kind of had this issue and, resulted in a big kind of impact on the service to the MTA's subway system. And now comes the remnants of what was a major hurricane, Ida, that came up here and has given what was just described in a piece that you had a part of as a once in every 500 year storm. So there's certainly a lot to do, kind of in terms of these evolving new challenges that just come from nature and other. So can you talk about, what really comes out of yesterday? And I know the expectation that the Long Island Railroad Chairman, Phil Eng, said that the service would be fully restored by today. So I guess, has service been restored fully? And then, can you talk about, I guess, those challenges and how he's kind of seemingly handled them so far? Yeah,
it's been a real challenging week for Jano. I don't think anybody really questioned his know-how on the job as far as kind of the nuts and bolts side of it. he initially, as you touched on, was not supposed to be the chairman. The chairman being more kind of a political job, and the previous governor hoped to split the jobs. That seems to be kind of dead in the water. So it does look like, at least for the time being, he's going to hold both jobs. And a lot of what he's had to do over the last week is on that side of more the political side of being the face and the representative of the MTA through various crises. And as you touched on earlier in the week, there was a ConNet problem that led to about half of all subway trains being without power, and hundreds of riders being stranded on trains, some of them evacuating on their own onto the tracks, a very dangerous situation overnight, Sunday into Monday. And then just a few days later, I think fair to say the whole region was caught off guard by the severity of Ida. And I mean, I've been on this beat for about a dozen years, and have seen my share of weather events that have affected the Long Island Railroad. Typically, you're talking snowfall, extreme temperatures, storms that with a lot of wind that blow debris onto tracks. I've never seen water affect the system like it did yesterday. But if you see some videos that were out there, particularly I shared one from Great Neck of just the amount of water, it is astonishing. I mean, the governor who visited Great Neck yesterday talked about the stairways being transformed into essentially Niagara Falls, and it wasn't much of an exaggeration.
Yeah,
you're talking water just pouring down onto the tracks. And last night, the railroad released some images that they shot of the damage, and it really just washed away tracks in a lot of locations. You know, when you think about tracks, you're talking about, you know, the steel rails over a bedding of rock and dirt, and in a lot of areas, you saw the rails essentially suspended in the air because all the bedding, all the soil underneath had been washed away. Yes, I mean, all that considered, they were mostly back to normal by yesterday evening, and I think by last night, it said they had restored full service. I think they're still running on one track in Port Washington, but are running their full slate of trains. And last I checked, you know, on or close. So yeah, they really did. I think work hard to turn it around quickly and get the system back in shape. But you can't really minimize what an impact that storm had. I mean, it was incredible. Some of those that we saw. It almost
sounds like you know, if this is going to be the new normal, that there's a redesign on the board for, you know, you can't keep putting the railroad back together every time the water washes it away. Somebody's got to think of something that, you know, that's a scary thought.
There was some talk yesterday about, you know, certainly after Sandy, what's that, 9 years ago, they invested a lot of money and resources in hardening the infrastructure from extreme weather. But really what you were talking about there was coastal flooding, things like that. You know, this flash flooding, not that it's a new problem, but it's one that has been certainly occurring more frequently. I think certainly in the subway side, more often these videos of water, you know, pouring down into subway stations, heavy rainfall, because the issue is drainage on the streets, right? And I know the city, you know, you get manholes and vents that get plugged up, and the water's got to find its way somewhere, and so it works its way down into the subway system. And you saw similar to that in a lot of stations here on Long Island that are essentially sunken below ground situation in Great Neck, where the station is reached, you know, not able to drain properly, just work its way down station platforms, stairways, all the way down onto the tracks.
Yeah, that's been the big issue, just seeing those low-lying lands versus, like you said, where normally people realize that if you're near the coast, you're going to have to build far enough inland, but you can't really change the slope of every single, piece of track that's, at maybe a little below sea level that easily. So it certainly was a surreal situation seeing these, not just the trains, to be fair, but the expressways and, all the other infrastructure, just roads where low-lying lands and people got flooded out. Certainly an intense sight, but nonetheless, considering all that, it's a pretty impressive feat that they managed to restore service as quickly as I guess they did, knowing how dependent, everyone in the city and Long Islanders are on that system. So that said, I guess, I know that, again, there's been this state of emergency that was declared by the governor. How does that impact the MTA's or LIRR's, kind of ability to, maybe get this type of compensation to make upgrades or to repair the damages? How does that work?
Well, they're always looking for more federal funding. Obviously they did pretty well in terms of receiving federal funding from the pandemic and from Sandy as well. This is a new problem, and you've already heard kind of the overtures. Yeah, I think this becomes kind of something else on the MTA's to-do list, starting to address this kind of new weather from of flash flooding.
Well, you know what? It would also look like, Long Island's development flow seems to be that the railroad, they're building apartments and they're expecting to use the railroad, trying to get people out of their cars. This is going to be an issue. Somebody really, if the railroad is going to be the linchpin of new development on the island, it's kind of scary to think that, new storms like this, we're at a higher level now, it seems, could really, put the kibosh on all that. Yeah,
that's always the concern. We're trying to restore to the level of service, but things like this, obviously it's a blow to the system as a whole. But like I said, it is resilient, and it's amazing. Just thinking as a layman, a layperson here, how much electricity and how much kind of sensitive instruments are involved with these systems to think that, people manage to stay safe overall. It is still an impressive feat, of course. So maybe just to close up in the time we have left, I guess, Alfonso, I know you got to run to that press conference. Just in terms of, what is the projections going forward with, still recovering from this storm? And then, what are you covering today in terms of other things that the MTA is working on and, promoting going forward?
The same cannot be said for the subway system from the effects of the storm. They back for the most part, but last I checked, still various cancellations. And when you think about that system being underground, you'd understand why they'd be okay. Again, third track project. This is a kind of a milestone in that it's 8 grade crossings through Nassau County. This was a big selling point for communities that were resistant to cups and the noise with horns and the threat of accidents, safety concerns with grade crossings. So a big aspect of this project from the outset was as much as you could to eliminate these grade crossings. This mostly meant sinking the road under the tracks, building under so you don't have those intersections where the road and the tracks meet. And over the last couple of years, I've attended several of these where they reopen a road. I believe this is the last of them here in Willis Avenue in Mineola. So exciting, big news. The third track project has been moving along. I'll preview a little bit of a story that there might be some snags, and I'll be working on that over the next week. Some new issues that have come up that could be, more substantial than this project has seen until now. I think there's confidence in the Long Island River that they can work through them, but there'll be some new roadblocks in the way over the next few months.
Of course. So certainly appreciate that little bit of a scoop on what you see in your future reporting on. And certainly we encourage everyone to obviously subscribe to Newsday and to follow Alfonso's reporting there. And of course on social media. where he is on various platforms. And I know you also did some stories about the potential of a Yaphank potential station relocation that people are somewhat clamoring for. And then I know there's a discussion of the South Fork commuter connection resuming. So a lot of good stuff out there on your beat. And thank you as always for, having so much control of the information and dealing with the tech issues today. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it's part of the, on the field charm. And we got at least some of those train horns honking in the background. So, certainly get the whole radio effect there. So no worries, Alfonso. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Alfonso.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care. You too. Have a good weekend.
Soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
See you.
I think it's a good thing that the guy who is now the chief of the, MTA was the construction guru, because, I just see it as a continuation. They obviously don't want these projects going by the wayside because they're knee deep into them.
Of course.
But don't think that that's never happened, where they've been halfway, not necessarily the railroad. I'm talking about big construction projects in general. They get into the middle of it and say, uh-oh. And it either gets bogged down in lawsuits or that's why one of the things he mentioned was about a design and build. It's the same company. When you have 15 different companies that have to,
then everyone gets to pass the blame onto somebody else.
They wind up suing each other, and it takes 10 years just to get out of court before you can drive the first nail into a piece of wood to put anything together. Yeah. So interesting, very interesting.
Definitely, it's an interesting perspective to have. Certainly. It sounds like, the role is going to be probably a single role versus the governor wanted to have the two roles. So that's good information to know that that's likely to just stay as it is. And, the fact that he is a New York City kind of person and, isn't really that familiar with Long Island, as we said before, I'm sure he'll get pretty quickly familiar with Long Island and with the Long Island Railroad system as a whole. So
he also still has to be confirmed by the state Senate.
Yes, this is certainly true. So keep a lookout on that. And now, thankfully, we are joined by our next guest.
Yes, we're very happy to have with us, for the first time, Dr. Tahira DuPree Chase, who is the new superintendent of the Westbury School District in Nassau County. Good morning, Dr. Chase. How are you?
Good morning. I am well. And how are you? And thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, anytime.
You're welcome. Happy to have you.
We expect you to come back after this, too. We call you again,
All right. We've got great things to talk about.
Yes.
Of course. Definitely a new school year, a lot of moving pieces. And you yourself, I know, obviously have a lot of education expertise and have experience of 25 years as an educator and previously served as the superintendent in the Greenburgh district of Hartsdale, New York,
right.
Which just for our listeners, where is that again? Is that in the Hudson Valley or is that?
So it's in the lower Hudson region. It's in Westchester County.
Okay.
It's about 25 miles from New York City.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, no, it was something familiar, but I just wanted to make sure that we got the right location on that. But the point is that now you have taken over the helm at the Westbury School District here, close to our home and to a lot of the residents and listeners, obviously, of our show. So we're happy to talk with you, as we did last week with the Port Washington School Superintendent, regarding all the things that I'm sure are on your plate in terms of trying to make sure this is a great new school year, safe and happy and, filled with lots of great learning for all the students and families. So I guess, let's discuss maybe first, as we normally do with folks who are kind of in a public service role, how, maybe the expertise you had even in that school district, during the pandemic kind of informs you and, what's happening now as this new school year just started a few days ago.
Well, we recognize that, first and foremost, we have waited almost, I would say, 18 months to bring our children back to school, full in-person instruction. So it is such an exciting time in school districts to see the children. The hallways are bustling. The teachers are excited. The kids are so happy to be back in school. And so that's really exciting. But we have to prioritize what's the main thing. Number one, we want to keep children healthy. We want to keep our children and our staff safe. That's our priority. The other priority is to make sure that we educate children. We understand that many of our children have experienced learning loss. Remote learning did not necessarily provide the learning that we would like for children to have. And we know that in-person instruction, having that warm body in front of you, that warm, caring, nurturing body in front of you is what we consider to be the optimal experience for students to learn and to be engaged with their peers. So that socialization is important, but just addressing those needs of our students, those academic needs, first identifying what they are and then addressing them immediately. The other the third leg of what we're working on in our school district is addressing those social emotional concerns and those social emotional needs that our students have. Many of our students are returning to us, having experienced loss, having experienced grief. And loss means so many things to so many people, not just the loss of loved ones, but the loss of the absence of being in school. Maybe their families, maybe their parents have lost their jobs. Maybe they've lost their home because their parents lost their jobs. So that normalcy that kids are used to, there's an experience of loss. And we realize that kids are coming back to us, maybe having experienced trauma. And so we're going to have to address that trauma simultaneously to addressing the academic needs of our students. And also here at Westbury School District, we're not only focused on our students, we're equally as focused on our staff and our faculty, their needs, their social emotional needs, preparing them, reacclimating them, if you will, to being in school full time in person, and also the needs of our families. Without the family support, we will never be able to impact children the way we need to. So we want to re-engage our families, letting them know that they are our partners in educating children. And, those big tasks are what we're up against, and we are so prepared to meet those needs.
Wow. I mean,
that's great to hear.
During the pandemic, I've often made the joke that, I've been locked away so long that I don't know if I remember how to act with people out in public. And I look at all the kids going back to school, and it's almost kind of like the first time. It is. After this big event, we're all going to come back together. I mean, certainly there's different protocols and different rules. And as a superintendent, you got a whole bunch of things put on your plate besides the fact that you have to educate these children. It's a daunting task. I mean, I'm glad you have it. And I sit here behind the microphone and, but
ask questions.
Yeah.
But to that point, and I know you raised it, the social emotional needs, but also in addition to obviously the education, things like mental health, things like food insecurity, all these types of things. Is that something that you also saw up in the previous school district, during the pandemic? And is that something again that this is a model that you're kind of bringing into the news to the school district that you're at, or is this something that is kind of unique? Or can you talk to us a little bit about how you're dealing with some of those, again, non-educational needs as well?
Absolutely. So you're correct. In my previous school district, we did address the food insecurity. We developed a program called Grab and Go, where what we did was we actually chartered our own school buses and went into the community to distribute food to students. We recognize that students need a nutritious meal in order for them to continue to access learning, right? To keep them focused. And so that was very important to us. At my former school district, we had about a 60% free and reduced rate. And so we recognized that students needed to eat. And we provided meals for students, and some of the meals were frozen, and we gave it to them to last for multiple days. And we provided instructions on how to reheat the meal so that the kids can have it, and they don't have to. We don't have to go out every single day to deliver that to them. We delivered homework to children. We really use all of our resources to go into the communities to make sure that children had everything they needed. We partnered with Verizon to make sure that we had Wi-Fi access for students so that they can access the learning. But moving forward, or fast forward to here at Westbury had a very good model. So I inherited a very strong model here. You have strong administration team, strong leadership team with the school board, as well as our teaching force. And they too went into the community to provide lessons, homework for the children. some of the kids needed work packets, delivered Chromebooks. I'm so proud that this school district has provided Chromebooks for all 5,000 of our students, which is amazing.
Definitely.
And just the other day, I think you guys would be quite impressed. The other day, we've been swapping out Chromebooks, making sure that our children are ready to receive the learning. And there will be a sort of a mixture of children learning while they're in class, but also using the technology. And so, we are prepared for that. And our Chromebooks have MiFi included so that students will have the access to the learning, regardless if they have broadband or not. They will be able to access the learning. And we wanted to make sure that all kids had access to it. But you're correct. Even now in our school district, we're still continuing with the grab and go. We did it over the summer. We want to make sure that our kids are well fed. But what's important about the grab and go, it wasn't that we were just giving the kids something to eat. We made sure that it was nutritious. We made sure that it was wholesome and it was healthy. We want to feed our children with healthy food so that they can have healthy thoughts, thus create healthy outcomes. And we're committed to that. And we will continue to be committed to that.
That makes a lot of sense, certainly, and good to see again that you came into a school district which we are familiar with, and like you said, has a lot of good folks there that already were doing good work, and you could just add your experience, and that synergy for the better is certainly, I'm sure, what parents and students will benefit from. And now turning to obviously the other main issue, which is part of the reopening and the get back to full in-person learning, is the discussion around, both mask mandates for students and faculty, as well as, vaccine, kind of mandates and policies for faculty themselves. So first, in terms of the mask mandates, we know that there was a lot of back and forth, and school boards for a while weren't given specific guidance from the Department of Health. It was kind of a little bit, each school district would kind of make their own policy. But now the governor has announced that there would be a statewide mask mandate in place. Mm-hmm. So how is that working out, and how have you kind of navigated this process, which obviously a lot of parents are concerned about?
Sure. So you're absolutely right. Most superintendents, all superintendents in the state of New York, we waited all summer for additional guidance. And, toward the end of August, we've learned that we weren't going to get such guidance. And what we did here at Westbury, and more, I'm sure, similar to most school districts, we just used good common sense. What's going to work for our community? We recognize the risk factor in the community and what made sense for children, what made sense for our staff and faculty. And we prioritize keeping our school communities safe. And so it was a no-brainer for us here at Westbury to mandate masks regardless of the vaccination status. We recognize that we serve a population that would be considered high risk. And so we did not want to put our students in jeopardy, thus putting our families and our staff and faculty in jeopardy. And so the board continued with their mask mandate. And so that wasn't a problem. Okay. And I know that our board also have been very, very instrumental in bringing vaccination stations here to our school district and helping parents sort of navigate that vaccination process for students who might be 12 and above. And in fact, we had a vaccine pop up at our high school in June. We continue to partner with the Department of Health, and we continue to partner with other health entities to bring vaccination awareness to our families, because there are some people who are concerned about vaccinations and what this could mean, but to bring that awareness. Right now, we are still waiting for further guidance in terms of the requirement for those non-vaccinated staff members to undergo mandatory testing, weekly testing. We received some preliminary guidance, but we are waiting additional guidance from our attorney to ensure that we do not violate any HIPAA laws, and that we also, in following mandates, that we are also very respectful of individual privacy. And so we're waiting additional guidance before we actually roll that out.
All right. There was an issue that we brought up when we were talking with the superintendent at Port Washington, Dr. Hines. I had an acquaintance whose son went to lunch, and he came back from lunch and he threw up. So, of course, he got sent to the nurse.
Sure.
The nurse sent him home, and he needed to have a COVID test before he went back to school. And this parent realized that it was going to cost them $130 to get a COVID test for the kid. Now, this is something that's been spoken of in places of business. If you decide you don't want to get vaccinated, fine, but you're going to get tested twice a week or a week, and that cost is going to go to you. Also, unvaccinated people, in some cases, are being told that their insurance premium is going to go up because of. But really, the issue I was concerned about is, everybody now is afraid of the school nurse. Because if she says somebody has to go home, and then of course it could be for whatever reason you have to go home. It doesn't have to be that you've got COVID. It could be something else.
But of abundance of caution.
But to return, you would need that. And when it first came out and people needed to be tested, those things were taken care of. But now, as we kind of trail off or move into this new territory, nobody's really sure who's paying for what, and a lot of parents are worried about that. How are we going to address those types of issues?
Westbury School District is such a unique place. And so it's an honor to lead this district. We have a health center here for our students. And, having the health center here, it eliminates some of the concerns that you just raised.
Okay.
And while, again, we don't have a full plan for what that testing process might look like, what I am seeing in the very near future is that our health facility will help facilitate the mandatory testing that will be required. And then, of course, those costs to parents are then absorbed. So that's helpful to our school district. Yeah. But as it relates to staff, we're still waiting for guidelines and guidance as to who pays for what. Right. Is the district going to absorb the cost? And then where are we going to get the money? Are we going to use the additional stimulus money? Are we going to receive additional stimulus money? So we're still waiting for additional guidance as to how that's going to look, how that's going to sound, and what that's going to cost. Right. And, once we get that guidance, we'll be ready to roll it out ASAP. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense, of course. And certainly a big, obviously, discussion always with, school districts is that school funding. And I know the state budget, thankfully, did have a kind of higher than expected amount of foundation aid that was given. But certainly, like you said, it depends on what comes down the pipeline from Washington in terms of things like the CARES Act or, other types of large kind of stimulus packages, I'm sure, and, the state, what they can potentially reimburse. But we only have a few moments left with you. So we just wanted to maybe get your thoughts on a few other just kind of education topics to close. I know Bill is a kind of touring musician. His family, they have a nice band that has done some international things and, around the area as well. But the point is that, he always is a big advocate, as myself, for the arts, kind of continuing. And we know that, that's something that often can be on the cutting block when it comes to how do we, move or deal with these other costs, so. Can you talk about, how that's kind of, being still kind of maintained? I know, obviously, sports, too, is something that's going to be, fully, it seems like, able to be done without, too much restriction. But what about the arts? What about like orchestras and bands and all that type of stuff? So, when you talk about sound academic programs or sound school district, I believe in the 3 A's: the academics, the arts, and athletics. Children come to school because they are so proud of what they can produce through the arts and through athletics. And we recognize that the arts have a direct correlation between academic achievement and students being celebrated and their social emotional well-being. This district is committed to maintaining its arts and its athletic programs, and I'm so proud of that. And we prioritize that because we recognize that it's part of educating the whole child. And again, children come to school to be celebrated in that fashion, and kids love to be able to display their talent. Thus, it does improve academic outcomes for students. And so we're committed to that area. And even though we have very strong COVID restrictions here in our school district, our arts program will continue. Our band and orchestra program, our choral programs will continue. We just had to develop mitigating measures in terms of how we deliver the arts and how we deliver the athletics. We're using our outdoor space as often as we can and whenever possible.
one of the things that we are looking into, we don't have yet, are these special masks where the students can pull down a portion of it to blow into a wind instrument. Right. And so there are ways in which we are making it easier for the students to still interact with the arts and athletics here in our school district. And that is one area we do not wish to cut.
No, that's great to hear. And it makes me very happy that you're in the position you're in. I can relax.
Thank you. And I'll take it a step further. In fact, we want to continue to improve on the arts. I was speaking to one of the elementary principals earlier, and we were talking about a performance with our younger students and bringing in some possible support, outside consultants to help us in that area. So we are committed to the arts. And I think the arts is what makes the school district so vibrant. And what it does for the self-esteem of children is just immeasurable.
Yeah, definitely an invaluable experience, of course. And thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Just the last thing, where can parents find?
It's over already. We're just having
I know.
Oh, you'll have to. No, you'll be coming back. You'll be coming back.
So, but until then, where can parents just find out all the information they need? What's the best website to find?
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for that. So we are resurrecting, if you will, our social media platform. So parents, go to our Facebook page. Please check out our Twitter page, and parents can follow me on Twitter. I'm giving out all kinds of information. My Twitter handle is Tahira D Chase, and that's Tahira, letter D, Chase, Chase. But they also can go to our website. Our website has all the information that families will need, and they can go on our website, individual school pages. So we can be found at www.westburyschools.org. Westburyschools.org. We are the proud Dragons, and we are a school district that's committed to excellence. So please follow us.
We'll be talking to you soon again. It was very nice speaking to you, and
amazing speaking to you.
You make me feel good about what's going on in the school district. Thank you.
I feel fabulous about what's going on, and I have great hope and expectations, and we will become a world-class school district. We have all the ingredients.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much.
Right.
You're welcome. Take care.
Holiday weekend. Enjoy. Be well.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good luck with the rest of the school year until we speak. Take care. Bye-bye.
And thank you for featuring Westbury.
And now the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to move on out of here. We thank you for joining us. Remind you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 o'clock right here, 90.3 WHPC.